Right. Okay. Yeah. That was the wrong mic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's coming through.
Yeah, I have a mic on the camera in front and a mic on the laptop, so
Okay. Okay.
the one on the camera is for some reason not working with Zoom. So
All right. Yeah, I think you can choose it. You have to go and specifically choose that mic.
yeah, if I choose it, it's sort of
It doesn't take it.
it sort of because the mic, the other speaker is somewhere else, because of the
Okay.
echo cancellation, it sort of disables it.
Oh, I see. Okay. So I'll start off with a welcome and then introduce everyone briefly and then get on to the questions. Pradeep, I think you can go ahead if everything's okay on your side. I think you can go ahead. All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. I want to welcome all of you. Wish you all a very pleasant evening. I understand that today we have many challenges, and in spite of that, it is great to see all of you here, logged in and about to discuss a very exciting topic. We're going to talk about the future. And at a time like this, a time such as this, with so many challenges and so many uncertainties, it is inspiring for us to get together and discuss preparation for the future. And there is so much to look forward to in spite of every challenge, in spite of every hurdle. There is so much to look forward to. Now, there may be lockdowns imposed and maybe we can't go about, but there's one thing we can do. We can prepare for the future. And we have an exciting topic today. We'll be talking about how we can prepare and become future ready and become a future ready business graduate, and how we can actually look at making our mark in the world. All right. And to do that, we have some really interesting and experienced panel members who we will be having a discussion with today. So we have with us Ms. Gayani, and Ms. Gayani is here from, she's a director, or rather deputy general manager of MAS Brands. And she'll be talking to us about some very interesting areas as well. We also have Ms. Binu here with us. Binu Wickramasinghe is is at Design and Collective, the Design and Collective, and she's the co-founder and managing director there. We also have with us the very experienced Mr. Austin Mascarenhas. He's a consultant and the head of the business department at IIT. My name is Havindra, and I will be the host for this evening's discussion. Right. And to get things started, I'm going to really focus on you, Gayani, for a moment, and I'm going to put you on the first hot seat, so to say, and ask you a very interesting question. You are a very accomplished individual, and I'm sure you've got to where you are today with a lot of passion, with a lot of commitment, and with so much that you've achieved. And you currently hold a general management position at MAS, and here I'm sure it has not been a very easy journey. I'm sure it has taken a lot out of you. And I'd like to ask you this question, as a leader in your domain area, how did you really advance in your career? If I can ask you, how you got to this role that you are playing right now as a deputy general manager, how did you get there? And if you could also, while you're telling us that, if you could also touch on the different skills that you've had to, groom yourself in, you've had to build over the years, I'm sure it will give a lot of insight to our young audience. So I won't take any more of your time and just hand it over to you.
Thanks, Havindra. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this session today. So to kick things off and to answer your question, yes, I do hold a DGM position at MAS today, but I have behind me 15 years of experience in FMCG as well as apparel, fashion retail to be specific. I started my career as a management trainee fresh out of university back in 2007. And during the last 15 years, I have gradually climbed up the ladder to get to where I am today. Of course, like you said, it required a lot of passion and patience and a lot of learning along the way as well. A few points, if I were to point out for the benefit of our viewers today, some of the things when I reflect back about my career, some of the things that I would ask young graduates to really focus on would be, take a little bit of time after you graduate. It's okay to experiment, Gone are the days when you are supposed to know exactly what it is that you want to achieve in life. So even if you are unsure a little bit, it's okay. Take a little bit of time, experiment. And that's what I did. I mean, of course, I joined a reputed organization as a management trainee. But during that period, we were given training in all areas of business. And after the training period, I realized, in marketing, I want to be in marketing. And and within marketing also, it's brand building that I was very passionate about. So very early on in my career, I chose what I wanted to do and what I was passionate about and what I was talented for. And having chosen that career path, I gradually progressed in my career. When I realized at some certain points in time, when one particular organization couldn't give me what I was looking for, I switched organizations in pursuit of what I was looking for. So I gradually went up the ladder in terms of learning about marketing, market research, brand building, brand management, brand development, all areas of brand management. Then I stumbled upon this opportunity at MAS midway through my career, and I switched roles once again, but of course into a more marketing communication role, but a little bit of product also along the way, handling product management. So the second point is, as you gradually go up your career, you shouldn't lose your curiosity. Something that I kind of kept on doing was, whatever role that I was handling in my career, I would learn about the industry that I am in, about the category, about the brand that I am focusing on, especially about my competition, what are the trends that are out there. It's always good to be curious, not just to kind of build up your knowledge, but also to ensure that you have interesting conversations with your peers, with your subordinates, with your superiors. So, you enrich the experience that you have, as well as you enrich your job role, you enrich the performance that you give to your organization as well. Another thing is, it doesn't matter how far along you have progressed in your career, you should not stop learning. Just to give you one example, just before I stepped into this role of handling the brand Amante for MAS brands in Sri Lanka, my boss at the time one day called me and said, organizations have this way of looking at your performance, identifying your gaps, identifying the training needs that you require from a professional as well as a technical point of view. And one of the things that he said was, you really need to brush up on your finance knowledge. You do have the basic fundamentals, but if you are going to step into a leadership role, you need to be able to look at the bottom line, look at how the business is performing. You need to be able to read a P&L. You need to be able to look at your cash flow, working capital. So you really need to. And even that far along my career, I decided I needed help. I'm gonna do a course. I'm gonna learn something. But then from that day onwards, one of my favorite things in business right now is looking at the bottom line. And ensuring that I give a bit of a run for their money to my finance team. So you keep learning, you keep improving. So find what you're passionate about, pursue it, be curious, and don't stop learning. Would be kind of my advice to the young viewers who are joining us today.
Excellent, Gaini. I love what you said about the impetus or the move to continue learning. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Gaini, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, but you walked into the corporate sector, right? Straight after your studies, you kind of got into your corporate sector, and you were kind of lucky because you found yourself where you wanted to be, right? And eventually the corporate sector itself pushed you to learn new things in different areas. Am I correct? Yeah,
absolutely.
Right. And you sort of found yourself following a pathway that they laid for you, and through it you can continue to acquire new knowledge and develop yourself as you went along, right? And that's very exciting.
Exactly.
That's very exciting. And at the same time, I am really impressed these days about the trend that we have in a lot of new businesses starting up, right? We have so many entrepreneurs today who may not, like you, Gaini, who may not really go into a new business, but who start out on their own. And it's a kind of a scarier picture, I would say, right? Where you don't have any direction from anybody, so to say. You don't have any, no one pointing their finger at you and say, this is what you need to improve in, this is what you need to learn. But basically, it's like you set sail in the ocean and you've got this whole world in front of you. And now what are you going to do? You're an entrepreneur. You're starting something on your own. And I think that's just as exciting. And I'm going to turn to you, Binu, because that's who you are. You are an entrepreneur, right? You've set sail into this ocean and I'm sure you're a learner yourself, because you can't survive unless you are. And, I hear of, everyone thinks that, being an entrepreneur is just about registering a company. And that's the easiest part, right? You go and register a company and you get it on paper and you have this company certificate in front of you and you think, now I'm an entrepreneur. But that's nothing. From that point onwards, you've got to make it successful. And Binu, if you could take us into that bit of your journey, I'm sure it's going to be exciting. How did you get started? And, what were your challenges?
Okay, so like you said, my challenges, I would say, were it was about understanding what I was doing. So the thing is, you tend to, as an entrepreneur, you obviously have an idea of what you'd like to do. It's like, you kind of have a passion saying that, okay, this is what I would like to pursue, or like, this is the project that I'd like to do. But one of the things that I have to say, I'd like to kind of break my entire conversation into let's say 3 sections, where I speak firstly about the research and the learning part of it. Like what Gayani said, very, very accurate. Even when it comes to entrepreneurship, what a lot of people don't think about, which I think even for me, I think coming out of a corporate job and going into starting my own business, something that I had to really learn to do was to research and to learn. Because at the end of the day, you are the owner of the business, you are the manager of the business, you are sometimes the financier, sometimes the accountant, sometimes the social media, digital, you're pretty much everything. So you need to research, you need to know, you need to learn, and you need to keep learning. It's not going to stop. You are going to have to learn how to, let's say in terms of my business, which is Design Collective, it's a retail space. You have to learn little things such as quality controlling garments to, let's say, how to fix your steam iron. There's nitty-gritties like that. But as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to learn, and you need to know every single thing related to your business in terms of, let's say, inside your business as well as outside. How does your customers feel? How does your sellers feel? How does your designers feel? You have to kind of look at all the moving parts. So I would say that would be one of the main aspects, learning and kind of understanding how all these moving parts work. Another very important thing that I would say is about people. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, one of the main things, and when it comes to business in general, I would say the main thing would be you having the correct team. You having the correct team is very, very crucial. So one is one aspect of it is having the correct team, but also another thing is about having the correct, understanding your customer and who you're catering to. So people become a very, very important aspect when it comes to entrepreneurship. You need to understand how people behave, how people like to target themselves. It can be customers, it can be designers, it could be buyers that you work with, it could be other retail stores, it could be your own team. Because at the end of the day, your team is your strength. That's at least how I believe it, because without my team, I'm not going to be able to do half the things that I do on a daily basis. So choosing right people with the right attitude, who are open to being creative, who are open to kind of open themselves to look at new ideas and to be able to adapt fast to a very fast changing, very fast-paced environment is very, very important. So selecting these people who are open-minded, who want to look at the world with creative solutions is also very crucial. Another aspect I would say is about the risk-taking factor. Now, a lot of people think, oh, you have your own business, so you can decide everything that you do. Yes, that is true. But at the same time, you're also having your entire team's lives in your hands, especially considering the current situation. I think this is sometime that, it has made it very, very apparent, I would say, at this point, saying that, okay, yes, you do have to take care of your, like, you do have to take risks, you have to take quick decisions, but you have to always remember that you have to take calculated risks. Yes, you need to be creative, you need to be out of the box, you need to think like nobody else would think. You need to think, how do I make it different? How do I make it more, what do you call it? How do I attract customers? How do I get everybody engaged? You need to think about so many things. Nowadays, you have so much of social media. You have TikTok, you have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You have so many channels of speaking to your customers that your customers are flooded with these options. But the thing is, you also need to kind of think, okay, how do I get these people in? But also, like when you're thinking about out of the box ideas, you also need to think, okay, how do I cater this to, kind of take a calculated risk? Just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean that you can take a risk just by like thinking about it. You have to always think. And I think that's some of the 3 main things that I've learned in the last couple of years of me running the business. And, obviously, like I said, as my first point, it's always a learning curve. There's no right or wrong. I think in our first 2 years of functioning, and even now, we make so many mistakes. We learn, but, we learn and then we don't repeat the mistake again. But, you'll make another mistake afterwards. That's always how the learning curve is going to work, irrespective of me being an entrepreneur or be working for somebody else. But that learning curve is something that you have to kind of cherish and enjoy, I would say.
Excellent, Binu. That was so inspiring. You remind me of something that Jeff Bezos said. I was listening to one of his video clips recently, and he said something about, embracing the mistakes that we make, because he says that, companies that choose to embrace the mistakes they make are the ones that learn and adapt for the future. And I think a lot of what you said, and you touched on some of the same things that Gayani, who's been a corporate leader for a long time, and you being an entrepreneur, both of you touched on the learning factor and how important that was. And Binu, you sound like you have become a jack of all trades with all the exposure you've got, and also being kind of forced to become a master of all of that as well. Right. And you talked about your team. And I think, Gayani, you'll appreciate the team factor as well, in the role that you play, managing and running a business. You've got to have a strong team. And both of you, I love what you said again and again. I'm repeating this about the learning factor. And that really nicely brings me to Austin. And Austin, you are an experienced educator. And you've also held many senior C-level roles in the industry in a number of different companies. So you bring a wealth of experience. And I'd like to ask you this question. Austin, with all this learning requirement and all this business background that is necessary to be successful in the corporate world, and even as maybe a beginner of a business and an entrepreneur, right? All this business background that is needed. How can one really learn these things? How can one really get educated in these areas? And from a university perspective, from a higher education, a tertiary education perspective, how is that possible?
Right. So that's an interesting question. So I think maybe some of the students who are in on this, or prospective students who are in on this call also, maybe, having posing the same question in their own minds, oh, this all sounds so complicated, what Ms. Gayani said about, all that things that she's doing, and what, Ms. Binu said about, all this entrepreneurship stuff, all this seems very complicated. How do I learn all this kind of question might come up, right? And my answer would be that today's business graduates are very lucky, right? Because today the fundamentals of most of what Gayani and Binu were talking about actually imparted to them in a good business management degree. I mean, it might help you a little bit to understand, how I came into this current position. when I started out as an engineer, right? So I knew nothing about business. I didn't know anything about what is bottom line, right? Okay, because my first degree did not give me anything of that, any of those knowledge, or any of those things, right? And so as I came up, in the career, right? So at one point, I was sort of moving up the ladder in the organization, and I became a divisional manager responsible for a product. Therefore, I had to look at the profitability of the product, the marketing, the production, the support mechanisms, and all of that. And then I found that, look, I don't have any of these things because none of this was taught to me in my university, right? And I went and did a master's in management, right, to kind of get myself up to date, and then applied it to my business, into my job actually, right? But when I look back at what I learned in my master's, this was like long years ago in business management, and what's being taught to the students in the undergraduate program today, I would say that students today are given much more in their undergraduate program than what I learned in my master's program when I went and did my master's in business management. But today's business degrees, business management degrees, especially the ones that are coming from the international playground or international market from UK and so on, a lot of the fundamental disciplines that the two achievers here talked about are already in the program, right? So let me just give you some example, right? So like listening to Bino, I was thinking, oh, okay, so much of digital skills are needed for someone an entrepreneur like Bino, right? Because she's having to do her marketing using the digital marketing tools in today's world, right? I'm sure she will agree that if not for digital marketing, right, you will find life so difficult. I mean, especially in today's situation, in the pandemic world, right? But in today's degree, for example, the digital analytics and digital marketing and all of that are available as subjects in the degree program itself, right? So things like digital analytics, which help you to sort of understand the business, and digital marketing are available as subjects in the degree itself, right? So those are taught, and of course, all the fundamentals are taught in today's business in very good, with a lot of case studies of what is actually happening in the global market and so on, right? So, for example, in strategic management, students are taught about how the big companies, even like big companies like Amazon, how they have made their decisions about what products to sell, what strategies that they should execute, what is the value proposition that they bring to the customer, even analysis of how Amazon operates, their operational aspects, which is amazing to be able to, they deliver a thermometer in the USA to any customer. I mean, any customer in the sense certain regions in the towns and so on, within 80 minutes. That's a promise they make. You order a thermometer from Amazon, it will be at your doorstep in 80 minutes time, right? So it takes an amazing amount of operational efficiency to do that. Right? It's faster than sometimes, me getting something from Uber Eats from top of my road, right? Okay. So it's so much of efficiency is there, and they are doing like, millions of thermometer sales, perhaps, for a month, right? So even those things, case studies are taught for students who are doing bachelor's level education. So the first point I would like to make is like today the students don't have to get kind of frightened, because people of my era and perhaps people who were like Bino and Diane, things that they picked up from their experience, many of those things, fundamentals are taught in the degree itself. Like, for example, I heard, I just took down some notes while Gaini and Binu were speaking. I heard, Binu talking about, choosing the correct people and understanding the behaviors of people, both the customers and the employees, right? But that kind of thing, the basic subject, organizational behavior is there in the first year itself, right? In the first year itself, people are nowadays taught the fundamentals of, how do you understand the behavior of people at work, the behavior of consumers and all of that. So those things are basically taught now, right? And those were not taught long years ago. The other aspect is, okay, I heard a lot about, entrepreneurship. Now, listening to both of them, what struck me was, Gaini has been in the professional field, but there is also entrepreneurship involved there, because she also had to, think of, okay, what shall we do with this product and so on. The same thing happened to me, because I was in the field, as a professional, I was the divisional head of a large software product company, but we had to think entrepreneurially to survive in the market, right? So we had to think, okay, it's like entrepreneurship within an enterprise, right? So we had to think, okay, how can we take a new product out into the market, right? And what are the issues involved? How do we, make this new product? How do we design the product, right? So such things are also covered in the business management program. And in fact, I must mention that there are pathways where somebody could, for example, specialize in digital business, or somebody could even specialize in entrepreneurship. The whole idea of taking calculated risk, as Binu was talking about, and she mentioned how, at the end of the day, you might think, okay, being an entrepreneur is great fun or something like that. Yes, it can be great fun, because you're doing a lot of, interesting stuff. But at the same time, you're on your own, and you have put, your whole career and your future kind of at risk, and you are also taking on so many people to put their careers and their future at risk by joining you. So being an entrepreneur is actually a big responsibility, right? So in the university, it is people are taught about, one, of course, to be creative and all of that, but they also taught about what does it mean, what does it take to be an entrepreneur, that it involves risk taking, and that and a wise entrepreneur, the best entrepreneurs in the world, are calculated risk takers. The whole idea of being a good entrepreneur is that, you take risks in such a way, right, that when the returns come, those are very high. But at the same time, you do it in such a way that if there was a failure, right, you're not on the streets, right? You're able to, recover from and go on, right? So actually, such aspects are actually taught. The fundamentals are taught in the business management degree itself, generally in the 3 years of education. I would say, but I look, going back to what both of them said, one of the common things that both mentioned is about learning, about continuous learning, right? I'm sure Gaini is today also having to learn so many things as she goes up the ladder, right? Because she mentioned how when she got to a certain stage, she didn't know finances, so she had to go and learn finances, right? I mean, it happened to me many times in my life, and it's still happening to me, right? I still learn many new things which are needed for my job, right? So now, for example, we have gone into the world of digital delivery, right? So now we have gone into the world of online education, right? The pandemic more or less forced us to get onto online education, right? So not only me, all my colleagues, had to learn, right, new things. We had to learn, okay, how do we deliver a course effectively online, right? So we, some of the things we learned on our own, some of the things we learned by approaching foreign universities with experience already, who had experience in doing online delivery, right? So we actually learned online by foreign universities teaching us how to do online education, right? So we had to learn online education, so to adapt to the current situation, right? So I would say that the most important thing is that education must make you into a lifelong learner, right? It must be something that makes the person to become a lifelong learner, because everything that we learn in the first degree will get changed by the time we spend a few years in the industry and come to this thing. The fundamentals will remain, but many other things will change, right? So this is where sometimes the kind of educational system we have in Sri Lanka at the moment can be very counterproductive, right? In the sense, it's not good. It's a simple word. It's very, it can be very counterproductive, because people are today thinking of education as getting a certificate in the shortest time possible by attending as many tuition classes as possible, right? So typically, if you ask someone after they have passed their A levels or whatever, and they would have done all wonderful subjects, you ask someone a question in one of those subjects, a very fundamental question, and they will say, "Oh, I don't remember. I just learned it to get through my exam. I just forgot about it the day after the exam." Okay, so that's the kind of education that people are getting used to, right? But university education is not like that, right? You learn certain things which you probably will remember, but more than that, you learn to learn, right? Not to memorize, not to think of the education as getting through exams and getting a paper qualification, but think of education as something that will change you, right? And that is how we nowadays the education is approached by the top universities in the world. Right? It's seen as a process of transforming a student from wherever they come from, equipping them with the basic fundamentals plus other what we call transferable skills, right, or graduate attributes, plus most importantly, teaching them to learn to learn. It's mostly, actually, I would say the key term is learn to learn, so that when they go out, right, they are confident that whatever comes across in their life, whatever they meet, they can take on the challenge and learn it and go on to the next step, right? So that's the way we have to adapt it. And I think it's very relevant today in these pandemic times, right? Today, just look at it, right? Now I realized that there was a lockdown only around 3:30 or something. I was busy at work, sitting in front of my computer, and I really did not realize that, okay, there is a lockdown here, right? So we are, in uncertain times where, things can change, and this whole thing is a big change that has come, right? But if we look at the lockdown in a different way as an opportunity, right? So we have to look at this as, okay, doesn't matter if there is a lockdown, we will focus on what we have to do, right? We will keep going, right? So a lot of fight back and resilience is expected from us, right? And that comes from confidence that we can learn things, we can adapt and go on. And those kind of qualities are built in through the process of undergraduate education. And that doesn't happen by just going for some tuition classes and getting some notes and memorizing it and getting some certificates and saying, okay, I've got a degree sort of thing. I hope I answered the question clearly. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Austin. Thank you so much. I think you brought a lot of insight there. A couple of things that you said really struck a bell. One is the factor that, some of the learnings that come from the business management degrees or from these degree programs are actually designed with so much of experience already, integrated into that material. So students actually go out into the world sort of pre-prepared. They don't have to reinvent all of this. I'm sure, of course, there is experience that can only be gathered by being in this in the industry itself and working, and that practical aspect that comes with it. But you go sort of forewarned and prepared. So I think you mentioned that, and that's very powerful. You also mentioned a nice thing about entrepreneurship, that even in the case of being in a corporate sector, like for your instance, Gaini, just being where you are in your organization as a leader, you still have to be an entrepreneur of sorts, making new pathways, new ideas, being creative, keeping the business evolving, right, and moving forward with the constant changes that are happening. I mean, I'm sure even today's news of another shutdown, you're already thinking of what you're going to do, because it's got to happen like that. And Binu, I'm sure that's the same with you as well. Austin, you also mentioned digitization, right, or digitalization, and the need for it, and this need to constantly evolve into the future. And Gaini, I'd like to ask you that question. Sitting where you are as a leader, with all this digitalization that's happening, as a business leader, how do you look at the trends of the future? How do you adapt to that? That's so important. They say that if you're prepared for the future, that's how you're going to survive, because there is so much of change that's happening in today's world more than ever before. So how is that possible?
Sure. I mean, if you look at digitization from a business perspective and digitalization from a marketing perspective also, we see a huge amount of change that has come about in the last few years. I mean, when I started working and when I was into my brand management days and marketing and all of that, we were at that point discussing about mass media, about print advertising, about TV advertising, creating commercials, spending millions and millions of rupees on TV advertising, scheduling and all of that. But when you look at how the landscape has changed from that era to now, unless you're even big multinational corporations with millions of rupees as marketing budgets, spend majority of their money now on digital marketing. And it's the same for me as well. In my organization as well, 90% of the marketing budget is spent on digital media. That's because of these changes that have come about, and the ability to calculate your return on investment. When you look at communication, for that matter, those days it was mass communication. You do an ad, you do a print ad, whoever will see it. You have no clue whether the advertisement has been successful or not. But now what happens is communication has almost become very one-to-one and customized, and you can look at your customer segments and dissect them, segment them into different types of little pockets, and you can tailor make your communication to meet their requirements. You can tailor make your communication to target them where they are consuming this media. For example, you can talk to consumers through Facebook, through Google advertising, through Instagram, or any of these other platforms that they're consuming media from. So that's one of the changes that has happened in terms of digitization. Then the other thing is from a selling perspective as well. Those days, you would almost want to have like a brick and mortar presence. You'd want to have a store, or you'd want to be present where a store is available. But right now, you see a lot of brands that are shutting down their physical presence and moving to online. And also you see a lot of brands that are launched today, which are digitally native brands, like launching online itself, which is a very bold move. And in Sri Lanka, I think the pandemic has been a devastating experience for all of us. But I think if you ask business people, one of the good things that came out of the pandemic is this whole move towards digital, move towards e-com. And I think we have a lot to be thankful to the supermarkets, because they are the ones who kind of came in at that moment and made that fear go away. Before the pandemic, there was a fear. People were not so comfortable about sharing their credit card information online, sharing their personal information online. But it came to a point where we didn't have a choice. And now it has almost turned into a lifestyle of sorts. You almost survive on ordering things online. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is, of course, if you look at digitization as a business, the consumption of data. Right now, businesses cannot perform without data, from every aspect. Even if you, not just small things like research, but even in a production flow, for example, you take decisions based on data. You have MAS is one such big example where we even use things like, automation, which is all digitization. And the another thing that has really helped all of the organizations in this situation is the whole working from home. That's also part of digitization, right? You get to look at us. We would be having this seminar or a forum physically had it been a couple of years ago. But now everything is online, move towards online. We have all these software available where we can, be present in a meeting as if you are physically present. So digital plays a huge role, whether you are conducting a business, whether you are selling, whether you are doing lectures, whether you are marketing or whatever it is. The world has changed so much in terms of the usage of information and data and digital aspects. It's amazing. So, and I think those trends are here to stay, especially when it comes to these marketing and e-commerce trends. We are doubling down on our efforts on e-commerce because we see revenue has gone up from our e-commerce channels. So putting a lot of effort in terms of e-commerce, from teams to engaging with different agencies, trying to understand our consumers, segment them, target them differently. So these trends are here to stay. And those are some of the things that are very important for an undergraduate to learn and to be conversant about all these topics and to know what all these aspects can help you and an organization in a business perspective, I think.
Excellent. Thank you, Gayani. And Austin, if I could just touch on, Gayani just mentioned all these subjects and all these subject areas. Just a very quick, short, quick question from you is, do you see those subject areas covered in an adequate manner in these business degrees or in these business courses?
Yes, like I mentioned a little while ago, so the business management degree itself has a digital pathway, digital business pathway, right? So now, when Gani was talking about, slice and dice and targeted marketing, something amusing came to my mind. I went to one of the leading hospitals in Sri Lanka to, get some tests done and, things like that. So, yeah, and I gave my mobile phone number and all that, and I, came off, right? Sometime later, I was getting an SMS, marketing message asking me, telling me that there is an offer for me to do a particular test and to make use of it, right? And that offer is that test is something that only ladies do. It's a female-specific test which was being promoted to me, right? So I was like wondering, okay, what's wrong with this digital marketing that this hospital, leading hospital is practicing, right? So we see that today the proper practice of digital marketing is in a kind of a evolving or transition state in Sri Lanka, because people haven't really grasped how it is done, right? Now today, I mean, our internal marketing department also heavily relies on digital marketing, and they have all the techniques and technology required to target the message to the right people, And as like Annie was saying, today it is actually personalized, it's not only marketing, right? So when we look at the trends that are happening globally on the global front, right? Globally, many of the products are now going towards not mass production, but about customized production for an individual. Some companies are going to that extent. Okay, so which means that they understand the individual customer so much, right, that they could give a specifically targeted product to the customer, even according to the customer's request for customization, right? So the technology is available today to go to that level of understanding the customer, right? So digital marketing is taught, and also this whole digital business aspect is taught in the undergraduate programs. Some are available as a pathway, but even otherwise subject as a subject, the digital is taught. And that the thought that comes to me when all this is being discussed is that therefore the business management student also has to not become a computer expert or a programmer or some such thing, but someone who is comfortable in using computers and mobiles and digital technologies and so on, right? So therefore, even in the teaching or even in the when we do physically, right? Nowadays we generally heavily use computers. Right? In fact, sometimes the tutorials are run in a place where either there are computers available for the students to use, or students are encouraged to bring their own laptop or a kind of mobile or a pad or something like that. And a lot of the teaching or learning itself is relying on sources that are available on the internet. So students would, for example, go and there's directed learning. Students will be directed, for example, to go and watch a specific video on a specific site, right? Or they would be pointed to a case study that is available on a particular site, or they will be pointed to an internet site from which they could learn the subject itself, right? So I think so this whole digitization is happening inside the education itself, and students need to be, it is an advantage if the student is already started it while in the undergraduate days, where they are very familiar with the use of using the computers and so on, not to be programmers or technical people, but to be real conversant users who are not frightened about it, right? Because if they are kind of freezing up because they have to use a computer, it's going to be difficult, right? So that's one of the other factors that is happening there, where you really become somebody who is and this whole digital business actually requires not only just marketing, right, but the whole heap of other things that go with it, right? So it even, like, again, Gaini was spot on that, right? So today we talk about creating virtual products delivered virtually, right? Which means there's nothing physical about it, right? And we can give so many examples of it that is already happening, right? So you go and consume, a Spotify, video or whatever. It's a virtual product. There's nothing physical in it. You just see it and it's gone. And the business that is set up to do it is also sometimes totally virtual. But there are, machines involved all over the place, and few people somewhere, and even the marketing is actually sometimes happening, pretty much as a virtual thing, because there are, you go to, buy something on a digital platform. A lot of the prediction, pushing the right product to you, is happening through search engines and SEO and optimization and algorithms that are behind the scene that are, putting up the prompting the right product to you, and so on. So today there are a lot of opportunities. Even monetization is quite, has changed quite a bit now, right? Today there are people who make a lot of money on virtual product, right? While they are selling some other physical product, but they make more money on the virtual product, which in the olden days would have been considered as a byproduct, right? But nowadays it's the other way, right? So I think, but as we said earlier, the fundamentals are, nowadays covered in the business management program. Plus, it's the whole thing of learning to learn and the confidence and all that is given, so that when they go on and tomorrow the technologies will change. In 10 years' time, we don't know what kind of technologies or what kind of digital technologies will be used. And there are a lot of discussions and predictions and so on about the fourth industrial revolution and what the world is going to look like and all of that. It's a very difficult area to predict what things are going to be like even 10 years from now, or even 25 years from now. But there are a lot of people who are discussing about what's the future going to be like, right? But again, the key is, making the student to be confident, to be a learner, and to be, ready to face whatever comes.
Thank you, Austin. And thank you, Gaini, for those responses. I'm going to come back to you, so don't run away. But before I do that, I'm going to quickly jump to Binu, because Binu, I know you're tight for time and we need to let you go soon. But I want to touch on this. Binu, Gaini, and Austin both mentioned a lot about the e-business aspect of what we've been discussing so far, right? And I know that this is a new role that many businesses have had to adapt in order to be successful. And it's also not just about businesses, it's about businesses management, right? It's about managing your whole business. There's so many different aspects to the business that have to be looked after, have to be managed. So it's not just about having a business and running a business, you've got to manage it in order to make it successful. So Binu, the question that I want to ask you before you go is, if you see any related roles that connect with this business concept. So we talked about this that are essential for success today.
So the e-business is actually quite interesting, I would say, because the thing is, the kind of roles within the e-business obviously is related to what we learn, like what Austin was saying. It's very relevant to the current times. And, it's a lot to do with the managerial things that we learn through our courses. But at the same time, the job role itself, the skill set is pretty much the same, but the job role is different. And the kind of job roles that are present in e-business is slightly more different and a little bit more out of the box. At the end of the day, like, let's say what you learn through these courses is what you will bring to these businesses. Like, for example, we have a role which is called a merchandiser within Daraz. So the merchandiser is not a typical merchandiser who, like, let's say in the corporate apparel sector, we have a merchandiser who is more related to, like, finding or like basically procuring garments or procuring fabric and things like that and putting things together. But here a merchandiser is about putting, products together, like products in terms of what is displayed online. It could be checking the statistics. So there's a lot of analytical roles within a certain role. So it's obviously still the role of putting a product or sourcing a product or, finding those things together. But at the same time, there's a lot related to analytics that have come into play. So the roles, I would say, are different, like the names and the way that they function are different, but the fundamentals of it are still the same. But obviously, like I said before, even when it comes to corporate or anything else, you have to have that learning touch. You need to think out of the box. You need to think, you have to take on the challenge and you have to kind of, go out to it, and you have to be bold, and you have to kind of like be like, okay, if I don't know this particular skill, let me learn it. because now a lot of the corporates and a lot of the companies, they let you learn on the job. So you have to always take that risk and kind of learn. There's a lot of job roles that have kind of started within the e-business, which is now, one example would be merchandising. But at the same time, there's also like, let's say, regional roles that are now introduced. So you can be sitting now, because of COVID, everyone's now been taught the fact that you can be sitting in any country and you can manage 5 to 6 other countries. So you could be managing an entire region without even having the ability to travel to those places. So the e-business is like that, because I sit in Sri Lanka and I basically manage projects across 5 different countries. So the world has changed in the last 2 years, and e-business, I would say, is a very crucial factor. And like there's a lot of growth that has happened even in Sri Lanka and the other countries where, it's expanded in such a drastic way. So there's a lot of opportunity that this has created, and there's a lot of jobs that you can't think of the stereotypical jobs that you've always been hearing about. You have to think out of the box, and you have to be like, okay, let me try this out. Like you need to kind of, if it's a part of the skill set that you feel that you want to adapt to, it's something that you should definitely try. And the other thing is the fact that, you are open to a world of opportunity at this point is also a perk, because you could be sitting anywhere in the world, like I said, and you could be doing any job. So I would say that e-business is obviously the future, like what everyone today was talking about. It's, it's digitization and social media and things like that. And the e-business also ties into that. So e-commerce and, Daraz, for example, here is something that ties all this together, I would say.
Fantastic. Absolutely inspiring, Binu. I love what you said about managing 5 different operations in 5 countries, managing all that, sitting at your desk at home. That's just incredible. That's where we are heading. That's what it's going to be like in the future. I talk to a lot of business leaders, and every one of them is saying, guess what? We're recruiting people from all over the world, and we sometimes physically will never see them, but we're managing them as they are. The business continues to be managed, and there's so much of e-enabling that's happening. So thank you so much, Binu. Appreciate that. And Gaini, I promised I'd ask you another question. So ladies and gentlemen, you are free to ask questions as well. So if you'd like to send us a question whilst I quiz Gaini one more time, please feel free to do so. If you're logged in on Facebook or YouTube or any of the other social media platforms, you can raise your questions and they'll reach us. Okay, so you're free to do that. You can pose them to any one of the panel members. So Gaini, the last question I have for you is this. I want to know, you have journeyed into the position where you are today. Can you tell the youngsters in the audience, and also those parents who may be watching, what kind of skill sets that a fresh graduate who just completes their degree and walks into the industry, what kind of skill sets do they need to possess in order to become a leader in the corporate sector like you? What are those qualities that they need to have?
Sure. So one of the most important things that you need to keep in mind as you start your career as a corporate person or as an entrepreneur, it takes time. So most of us have kind of learned it the hard way. Don't ever be in such a big rush to get to a certain position. You need to have ambitions. You need to know where you want to be in life. But at the same time, like I said earlier, it's okay to experiment. I recently interviewed a fresh graduate for an internship position. So internships are becoming extremely commonplace today, right? And she said, I like to work for an apparel company. I like to get into retail. As a result, I'd like to join your team, but I don't know yet what I want to do. So I'm applying for this position. She actually applied for the position of a customer care person. And this will give me the opportunity to interact with your customers, interact with your team, and figure out where I want to be in the organization. And I applauded her for that. I thought that was fantastic. So don't be in a rush. Explore, experiment, talk to people, do internships, learn, and figure out where you want to be. Getting to senior leadership positions is not easy. And if you take the correct path and if you're patient in understanding and learning along the way, then once you get to a leadership position, you are a very strong leader because you've been through that path. Then nobody can fool you and you can issue the right instructions and get the job done. For example, when I started off as a management trainee for an FMCG company, as a part of the training, they sent us out in trucks to sell the products, which was a great experience. And I tell youngsters that today, we did that. So I was able to understand what the salesperson is going through, what the merchandiser is going through, what the retailers are going through. I was able to talk to them and understand all of their pain points. And then later on, when I got into a position of decision making, I was able to address those pain points. And that's the quality of a leader. A leader needs to be able to address problems. Half of the time now, what I do is I resolve problems, because you will see when you come to a senior position in an organization, all of your team members will run to you with problems and you are expected to give solutions. How would you know solutions if you hadn't been through those problems? So you need to be in a position to say, been there, done that. And this is how I think you should kind of resolve this. So don't be in a rush. If you learn and if you are competent, you will inevitably get there one day. But you need to be patient. And as always, I think my theme is learn. Always learn, be curious, be open to learning. Even when you get to where I am today or even to a more senior position, always be open-minded and learn. In meetings today, we always hear the words being spoken, I learned something. I think that's a good learning. I think that's something I didn't know about. How about if we try something like that? So you need to be open-minded. You will never get to a position where you know it all, because industries evolve, people evolve, and businesses evolve. So you need to evolve with that. So be patient, learn, understand, be curious, and then also have a clear vision of what you want to achieve and how you want to get there, would be my advice to fresh graduates.
Excellent advice, Kaini. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope that came through clearly across the platforms. I think that was excellent. And I'd like to just pose one question to Austin at the same time as well. Austin, and this is the flip side of what Gaini talked about. Gaini talked about the requirement that perhaps organizations or the student themselves or youngster, fresh graduate should have inculcated within themselves to walk into the corporate sector or to become an entrepreneur. But Austin, if I could ask you the question from a corporate perspective, what are the expectations? There are so many expectations on the young, fresh graduate today as they come into work for these companies. What are those expectations?
Yes, I would kind of, agree very much with the Gaini said about one thing: the students should not over-specialize in their undergraduate education, so that they have made they have made a choice too early in their life about, I want to be this, I want to be this international marketing person now, I want to do international business or whatever, without knowing anything about what does it involve to be in international business. Does it match my skill with what I really am wanting to do, right? I can give you a lot of negative examples. We don't have time for that now, right? So one of the key things is, summarizing, I would say is one is kind of knowing yourself. Or I would put it the other way, discovering yourself. Right. So as you go on, so sometimes the business management degree is a good place for a student to kind of know oneself or discover oneself. So where you sort of think, okay, this is what my skills are, right? This is what I'm passionate about. You sort of learn multiple subjects and then you think, oh, this is what I would like to specialize in, right? And then again, coming back to what Gaini said, I think she was very, blessed, I would say, to have a job where she was, as a management trainee, put through all the different functions and areas where she could actually learn on the ground what was happening, right? So nowadays in the degree program also, there is a 1 year of industrial placement, right? So students do industrial placement after 2 years of study, right? So for the first 2 years, students would learn the subject, right? And at the same time, acquire skills that are necessary to secure a job, right? Such as, getting along with people, how to prepare a CV, how to manage time, right? How to work in groups, how to work collaboratively. And so many things they would acquire in those 2 years. So at the end of the 2 years, they're actually ready for some kind of employment. Right? So then they want to work for 1 year in the industry. And that industry experience of 1 year helps them to find their feet, discover themselves. Okay, right? So like Danny said, one particular student has gone to do, customer service. So like that, you do a year of work, and if you are lucky to go into multiple roles in that placement, very good. But otherwise, even if you do one job, you can learn what is happening in the other jobs by just being observant, by looking around what's happening, right? So what we find in practice is that students who are prepared to go and work, we prepare the student and then they go to work for this industrial placement year. And that placement year actually transforms the student. Really gives them a different perspective of what the world of business is, what job roles are there, about themselves, what they can do. Many of them would gain a lot of confidence. Students who thought that, they can't do any job, now suddenly realize, I can do this job very well, and so on, right? So this placement experience within an undergraduate program plays an important role in giving the student that, chance to know oneself and to know what is out there. And that is a very key thing for a student. Then come back to the final year, and then you can sort of do a little bit of specialization on the pathways that you are passionate about or you feel interested about. So the pathways could be like, for example, digital business or marketing, or even a general degree with optional subjects that one is really interested in after having seen what's happening in the industry, right? So that is one way of, looking at it. And I think what Raimi said about, the students kind of looking at their career as a kind of a long-term thing is very important. Because today's generation, I think today many of us are used to looking for very short-term things. We don't, perhaps the pandemic has made it worse, right? People think, okay, I don't know what's happening in the future. I'm just going to think of only next thing. So can I get a job first away as a graduate? Can I become general manager marketing? That's the way some students are thinking now. Well, that's not the way to think of the career. You have to think of it as Gandhi said correctly, as learning different aspects so that you accumulate, or you sort of gather a lot of expertise in different areas so that, you at one point go up into becoming like a, major player. right? So students also should learn to think of their career as something that is kind of long-term thing. It's not like, okay, I go out and what's the job where I get and kind of thing. So that is it's really students have to change their attitude, right? To think, okay, I go to a career, I go do this for this many years, and then I find what my path is, and I go to the next one, and so on and so forth. Right? The other factor that keeps coming again and again is this whole aspect of learning to learn, right? To be a lifelong learner, right? So that I would say, I would conclude is the key factor. Right? Whatever degree that we do, students do, they should be lifelong learners. They also should be like, it's a global world, whether we like it or not, right? Now, we are going to have the financial city or port city in Sri Lanka, just a few kilometers away from where I live, right? And who are the people who are going to come and work there? Maybe Sri Lankans will work there, but the owners of those businesses and many of the others who work there would probably be foreigners, right? And what is their market? It's not Sri Lanka. Their markets are going to be, their customers are going to be probably all over the world. It's already happening because, there are very large recruiters in Sri Lanka, very large companies in Sri Lanka who are recruiting people to work on, as Vino mentioned, international projects. They are not going abroad. They are sitting in Sri Lanka, but they are doing, for example, analytics for the London Stock Exchange, sitting in an office in Sri Lanka. Right? So that's a great opportunity for a country like Sri Lanka because we need the foreign currency. So we need to set up many businesses which work out of Sri Lanka digitally, providing many sophisticated professional services all over the world and bring in the foreign currency earnings into Sri Lanka, right? So those are the things on a national perspective, right? So I think what we need to think is, okay, yeah, I would say that the key thing is adaptability and learning to learn, right? And looking at your career as a long-term thing, and looking at your years in doing the business management degree as an investment that you are putting for a long-term career. It's a great foundation, right? So so when you're building a house and you're putting up a foundation, right? You try to use the most appropriate and best materials that will take the whole load, right? Without trying to take shortcuts. You don't go and put a shortcut foundation because 10 years later, building will start cracking, right? So it is always best to make the first degree as a very good foundation for a long-term career. So I think, conclude with that.
Thank you, Austin. I think what you mentioned and what Gayani mentioned really sync together the requirements from the students end and the expectations from the corporate sector. And you said something very nice. You said with the business management degree program, where you are actually sort of placed or positioned in a way that you can learn what is required, and you are encouraged to understand how to learn. So when you even walk out of your degree program, start working, and so many changes take place in the future, you are sort of given the insight into how you can continue to be a learner and overcome those challenges. I think that is incredibly powerful. There's a question that has come up, and this question is raised, and I think, Austin, you would be best answering this question. The question says, is it possible to continue part of the degree abroad? Is that a possibility? And if it is continued abroad, is that degree recognized? What is that recognition like?
Yes. Now, this particular degree that IIT delivers, for example, we are going to specifics now since the question came.
Right.
Is an international. It's an internal British degree from a British university, right? So what is done here is exactly the same as what is being done in the British university. So any student who completes year 1, for example, could continue there in Britain for year 2. Or any student who completes year 2 here in Sri Lanka could go on and complete year 3 in Britain, UK. Right? So it is exactly the same degree, and therefore transferring after a certain level of achievement, certified achievement, to UK is possible, and many students have done that. There will be no questions asked because you are just transferring from, one location to another location to do the same degree, right? So it is it's very easy.
Thank you. Right. Excellent. And, if you've got audience, if you've got any similar questions like that, you want to know more about the degree, you want to know about technicalities like what we just discussed, what the subject contents is like, what the structure of the degree program is, what the cost is like, all those questions, please feel free to get in touch with IIT. The number is 0766. Just a second. Let me just. 0766 760 760. I'll repeat that, 0766 760 760. Okay. And also you could go to the website.
You can put the number on the chat perhaps.
Yes, I think, yes, I'll put it back on the chat. Just a second. Thank you, Austin. So it's just coming on the chat now. Also, you can get on the website, right? The IIT website, which is www.iit.ac.lk. All right. So you have the number on the chat. And you also have, let me just put the website up as well. And there you go. You have the website as well. And yes, there was a question, I think, by one of the students who said, is it the same for Robert Gordon University too? Yes, it is, right? So feel free to contact that number, and the website is also available for you to go and check out. All right, so if there are no other questions, I don't see any further questions raised in the chat, so we could bring the session to a close. I also want to let you know that there is a September intake, and that intake is now on, right? So you want to ask further questions, please get in touch with IIT. There is a September intake, and that is on right now. All right, everyone. So I want to thank you all for being here once again. Gayani, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing all that knowledge with us and your experience with us. It was invaluable, and we sincerely appreciate it. Austin, thank you so much for all the insight and that you brought to the table today. And unfortunately, Binu has not been able to be with us. She had another appointment she had to run to. So we're so grateful to the panel for being with us. And students, ladies and gentlemen who have joined in, thank you so much for being with us. Stay safe. These are difficult times, but they are also great times to learn, to prepare, and to get ready for the future. All right. So all the very best. Have a very pleasant evening, and hopefully we will meet again soon. Bye, everybody.